All right, we are here. Sam Glaser is my guest. The Joy of Judaism is his epic work. I say that. I need to explain just a little bit about the context of where we are. This is my home. What is bear in mind, a mazel tov comes to this man. He married off his son Max last night. We danced to the wee hours. It's really beautiful. Max and Hadar, an amazing mazel tov to you and your family. What was that wedding like? Just tell me. Mama, she married them last night.
It was a dream. It flew by. It was incredible to see relatives from all over Israel. And we just were floating. Really, it was like floating.
What was it like to marry off Max in particular?
Max is a consummate showman. He's extremely confident and loves to be the life of the party, and he helped design this whole event. So it was very much his personality embodied in it. So, marrying off your first son is a very emotional experience. And there's a lot of intensity building up to that event. And, thank God it just all went super smooth and amazing.
You live in L.A.
Correct.
You came here to Eretz Yisrael to marry off your son.
Mm-hmm.
Why and what did it mean to you to marry him off here?
I do a lot of talking and singing about Israel. I make a point in all of my concerts to have several moments of emotional peaks and valleys pertaining to the presence of the Jewish people in our ancestral homeland and the gift that it is and all the difficulties that we've gone through to get here. And an album I released back in 2012 is called The Promise. It's 13 brand new songs that I had written about my love for Israel. I come here every year on my concert tours. So I feel a certain power here, a certain love in the air, a wisdom in the air. I love walking the streets and running into people that I know, and even though I'm 10,000 miles away from home in LA, I really am home here. I also have a little brother who moved here with 8 amazing kids, so they're my nieces and nephews, but I feel like they're my own.
Yeah.
Yom Tov, yeah.
Yeah, Yom Tov is an amazing guy, and he speaks about you so often as being you're his best friend in the world. Yom Tov, and the both of you have made such an amazing difference on people throughout the world. Before we talk about how I met Sam, and Sam has been on shows that I've done in the past, when I made Aliyah recently, just last month, when I'm going to say this, tell me how this resonates for you. When I'm here, there's a certain part of me that's alive. That part of me that just is alive here, nowhere else can I connect to that, and Jerusalem nowhere else. Make sense?
Absolutely makes sense. It's indescribable, and you don't know that you have that part of yourself until you're here, breathing the air and walking amongst a place where Jewish people are running the country and determining when the holidays are and enforcing the laws, and the policeman and the sanitation engineer and the waitress in the restaurant, et cetera, are all Jewish people striving and working together. But all that is just the physical phenomenon of Jews coming together. What it creates, though, is a spiritual reality that you can't quite put into words. I need less sleep here. I need less food here, even though I've been eating like a champion since I've been here, because the food is so good in Israel. What's different? I don't know, but everything is about.
No, the food really is.
The food really is good. The vegetables are better. The meat is better. The dairy is insanely good. I feel when I walk the streets that I just want to hug everyone. I greet everyone with a smile, Jew and Arab alike. I want to give big hugs to all the Rebbitzins I see, which means rabbis' wives. Of course, I don't, because they wouldn't like that very much. But it's a feeling of family. It's a feeling of belongingness. It's a feeling of spiritual completion. I often tell people that you want to take on the gifts that Judaism has to offer, the things that give you the ultimate joy in life. Doing them halfway doesn't work. It's like trying to fill a balloon with helium that's perforated. It doesn't work. It just sags.
You write about this in the Joy of Judaism.
Yeah, how far did you get?
You have no clue how far I get.
Really?
All right. So here's the deal.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm doing this. You see, this is a little difficult for me because Sam is a dear personal friend. I'm also a fan. It's like the whole thing. To me, he's family, and I love him very dearly, and I fell in love with him at the Cage conference. I don't know, late 90s. The Cage conference, it has been redone, but in the old days, Cage attracted thousands, not hundreds, thousands of people from not only throughout the United States, but around the world, mostly educators. One of the things about Cage is it was everyone was there, meaning you had everyone from the Reform movement to the conservative, Orthodox. You had a few, but it was predominantly conservative and Reform. There were more women wearing yarmulkes there than men. That's just what I'm trying. The point is that there were Orthodox. I was a lecturer there, and what was astonishing was, so at Cage, thousands of people would get, and they just lectures all day long, and in the evening they would have the big entertainment, and he was it. He also gave classes on music and other things, but he was the big, and when I watched him for the first time, here comes a deeply religious Orthodox Jewish man, and he starts playing, and the whole place just rises to their feet. The music is so beautiful. You're such a master. You're such a sensation. Moment Magazine regards you as one of the top 10 Jewish performers in the world. I mean, just worldwide. But what you did was, I said, I'm on to him. He's spreading not just music. You're spreading a message through the music. Tell me about that.
Well, thank you for all those good things. I write from the heart. Words that come from the heart enter the heart.
Right.
Melodies that come from the heart, I think, penetrate very deeply, like they go beyond where words can go. And my songs are a gift. I get them mostly in my dreams. I wake up with either someone singing them to me, or I'm hearing a band, and I realize just at the cusp, the leading edge of consciousness, that it's a new song.
All right, back up, because this was going to be the question. I really explain to mortals.
Yeah.
Just let me go with this.
Yeah.
How do you write? Amy, how do you write? What is the process? It's the words, it's the music. Like, how do you do that?
I don't know. I don't know how most people write. I'll just tell you how I write. Starting around 6 or 7 years old, I was always hearing music, but I was starting to actually write it down. And I thought that was just what people did when they had thoughts or deep worries or whatever. It would resurface in their dreams. And I just got to a point where I was able to call myself into real time from that dream after hearing that melody. That's what I do. So all my songs, all my 25 albums are all the songs from those dream experiences. I don't sit down to write. I mean, unless I'm writing for TV. I do some music for TV. So then I scored a picture and I'm, working like anybody else. But all the songs you hear of mine, Hineni, Shabbos, Across the River, all those songs, hit me at some point in my life. And most of them that are my Jewish songs came at a transition point in the late 80s, early 90s, when I was starting to get into my Yiddishkeit, into my Judaism very powerfully. I grew up loving Judaism, but we didn't know from halacha. We never kept kosher. I mean, none of that. But I started realizing as an adult, you can choose Judaism. You can choose to bring holiness into your life.
Who was your biggest inspiration growing up that you turn to a deeply spiritual
that kind of
journey?
nudged me in that direction.
Right. Who was it? Just
I think it started with having, we had one connection to the shtetl of Europe. Our ancestors that came over, unfortunately, my grandfather died before I was born. I'm named after him. He died a few months earlier. But his brothers and their wives, Uncle Moshe and Uncle Shlomo, brought with them out of Auschwitz the old world to the new world. And they would come to our conservative synagogue, and they didn't say anything about the unusual customs that we had, but just would dance and celebrate with us.
so so this is very unusual because they come from the world of an Orthodox world.
Correct.
Back in Europe.
Right.
I'm just going to be straight with you. Most people coming from the old world walk into a conservative temple would find it very striking, very unusual, and might be stunned by what they saw.
Yeah, we got none of that. And I'm
None of
realizing
that.
at this moment that we're speaking
Yes.
why I became sort of a universalist.
Right. That means what was conveyed to you was not only spirituality.
Right.
But you. It's not just that you love everybody, all the
Right.
Jewish people, but they across the spectrum of observance. They love you. You are able to tie those bridges, and you got that from the
Correct.
survivors
Yeah.
as well.
I'm just realizing right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's where that came from.
Because I realize
Because it's natural for me. It's normal. How you wouldn't go into this particular synagogue because of what? There's Jews there.
Right.
Hungry for Torah.
Right.
I just don't get that.
Right.
That doesn't compute for me. So I can hear a million people tell me that halacha states just doesn't compute. So,
right.
yeah.
That's an amazing thing. The reason that my father, may he be well, I remember passing by a Reformed temple. I was a kid, 9 years old. I don't remember what it was. I knew the rabbi was a lady. I don't know. And I knew there's some very unusual things about what a sukkah should look like. It was odd. And I was a kid. I was a yeshiva boy. Grew up very, very traditional. And I made some remark that was disparaging, but I thought, well, lady rabbi. And my father said, they don't understand. We have to love them. We have to just bring them in and just share with them the light of Torah. And it was that critical moment that I went, wow,
Right.
we have to do it. And that's what you're doing.
Right. It just became natural for me to want to bring everybody together. And my mission statement is essentially just to get Jews connected to each other, connected to themselves, connected to their people, and connected to their Creator. We have to keep the Creator in the picture, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Decades of playing you're playing just to a group of rabbis in Colorado, playing Dodger Stadium, just everything all over for how many years? Since what, 1989 is your first album?
1991 was when my first Jewish album came out.
Yes.
That's when I officially started down this derech, down this path.
And then all these years, you come up with the Joy of Judaism. This is an engaging overview of Jewish spiritual practice by this globe-trotting composer, a sensation in the music world. Humor, insight. What he does with the audience is something sensation. I fell in love. I never told you this, and I'll say it now. There are times where I'm broadcasting, lecturing, I'm just very busy, or listening to folks who desperately need a little bit of help. And then at the end of the night, I need to plug in a very good pair of headphones. You do this too, I'm sure. This is like therapy. Put it on, and I play Hineni. I play his Hatikva. They going the national anthem of Israel, like his Hatikva is something so extraordinary. His Hatikva introduces as an instrument a shofar. It's astonishing. And I remember once asking you, I think you were on my show on Channel 7 years ago. I asked you, how did you come up with that? And you told me it was in the middle of the night and you just...
I did an all-nighter. That was
Yes.
one night of just sitting in the studio and tracking my vocal probably 30 times to create that stack of backup vocals and blowing the shofar myself. And, you can do a lot of crazy things in the studio these days.
One other thing.
Yeah.
So Sam and I live in this building. Sam is staying in the same building while his son and also his nephew, your niece,
Yeah.
just got married. I was at both weddings. Why? Because I'm so important. This is just by accident. We happen to be in the same. I live here. He's just a few floors up. And I begged Sam, and my mission was like 11 o'clock at night, get me this. I need it. By the time he got it to me, it was roughly about 12 o'clock midnight. And I get an email around midnight a few days ago, the book is at your door. So I run out the door, I open the door, and there it was. And I just start reading through it. And this is very much like your concerts. It's not just, it's incredible information about the Jewish faith, real insights, but like your concerts, this is you. That means you're pouring out of all this. How far did I get? I just kept moving through this, going through it, and then I said, but I want to see what happens later. And some of the most stories, he conveys information. Sam, you convey information in a way that's very striking. It's personal. Tell me about that.
Well, it is very personal, and I wanted to create an encyclopedic overview of the opportunities for joy in Jewish life. And I wanted to cover everything: life cycle events, holidays, Shabbat, rituals, parenting. I had 10 sections of things I wanted to discuss, and then I never did anything. And I was on the elliptical trainer next to a friend at a conference that I was performing at, and he said, Sam, you have this connection. Whoa, you just lost your mic. You have this connection with Jewish leaders and rabbis around the country. Why don't you seize the day and connect with them so they are inspired to share Torah with their congregants?
How does it feel to you to know that there are synagogues that on Shabbat sing your melodies?
That's ultimate nachas. When I show up and they're singing to me, their adult choir in 10-part harmony or whatever, or the whole community is, for the Shema, they use one particular melody of mine, or they use my V'har Einenu, or Kihem Chayenu, or Borei Yom, or whatever it is. That's ultimate. I mean, that's like something that I came up with or had the opportunity to channel is being used and is part of their worship, is how they're connecting. Moo? Yeah.
There's nothing more
powerful. I walked into a bar in Jerusalem.
This is not a joke.
And there was a rabbi, a priest. I'm kidding about that part. But I just walked in. I met my nephew, my Hasidic nephew, who's a really sweet, amazing guy. And, I love to connect with my nephews and nieces one at a time. I try to do one-on-one with them while I'm here. Anyway, so we're hanging out. We're having a beer. And the bass player knew me in this band. And the band started playing Hineni.
Wow.
And I didn't know these guys in the band other than this one guy. And my nephew turns to me and he goes, Sam, do you hear what's going on? I go, no, I didn't even notice. And then I start hearing the song coming up. So that's very cool. It's very cool to go around the world and hear your music played.
The Joy of Judaism, you can get it on Amazon. The end of the story goes, I'm reading this, and as I'm reading it, I go, because he speaks about the depth and the passion of the music and events that occurred in his life in this book. So I then go on YouTube, and I'm just watching these amazing videos of his music and of his teachings, of what he did in Australia. A real Kiddush Hashem, really. I've lectured in Australia extensively. This is something really very, very beautiful. So, and then I go back to the book, and I'm reading the book more, and I'm going through it. And then I realize the chapters are very unique in that you can go to a different chapter. It's not like a narrative. Each chapter really conveys a unique message, and you can move around, which was amazing. And then I'm watching his music, and I'm watching him with Yom Tov, his younger brother. And then I'm reading, and the next day is the wedding, and I look at the clock on the lower right-hand corner of my computer screen, and it says 4:13 a.m. And I go, wow, okay, it's time to wrap it up. It really is this is a great work. How long did you work on this?
It took 9 years.
9 years.
2,500 words a month.
Wow.
Was my discipline.
What do you expect to do with this project?
Well, obviously, I want it to be huge after putting 9 years into it. And it's taken, it becomes sort of a shalom bayit issue, which means it affects the peace in the house when I keep disappearing to work on the book or edit the book or, I incorporated a lot of the passages into my newsletter. So I had this monthly reason to want to express myself according to these 70 chapters that I laid out. I wanted to connect with people deeply. I want it to be a fun read. I incorporate a song for every chapter, so there's 70 free MP3s online that there's a link to at the beginning of each chapter that ties in to the subject matter. There's 4 questions at the end of every chapter for the people who really want to take it on. I have a lot of non-Jewish readers who've read it now who are wanting to learn more about the Jewish faith. And I want Jewish people to connect, to realize that whatever they've been taught or whatever they learned in Hebrew school, or if they've never went to Hebrew school, that there are opportunities that are there are low-hanging fruits. You can grab them right now, and they can propel you. One mitzvah leads to the next, as we learn, and that it starts a path of ascent, of holiness, and it's available to everyone. And I was being interviewed in Northern California a couple of weeks ago, and the guy there, it was at a music festival that I was playing at called High Sierra Music Festival, and the guy said, "What could motivate you to take the time as a musician to write this book? You must really love writing." And the fact is, I do love writing, but it's work to put together beautiful prose. It's a labor of love. And I looked out, we were being interviewed overlooking the concert grounds where I'm seeing 10,000 young people hanging out and partying and having the time of their lives. And a lot of people are finding their spirituality in music festivals these days. Music festivals are huge. A lot more people at music festivals than synagogues and churches these days, I believe. I started getting misty-eyed as I was realizing that I wrote it for these young people who don't necessarily have a connection to their spiritual path. And you can find your spiritual path in all sorts of wonderful places. But for Jewish people, there is a unique path. The Dalai Lama used to tell non-Jews or the Jewish people in his ashram that you don't trade gold for low currency paper money. Right? That they have diamonds in their grasp. It hurts me viscerally that the Jewish young people growing up, many of them don't have access. The Pew reports showing that 1/3 want to be Jewish but have no religion whatsoever. No, you do. You do have religion. You do have the most beautiful faith. And all we have to do is reread our notes. There's no need to rewrite the book, because the answers are in our texts, and having a relationship with rabbis is so powerful, and we have the answer in our grasp. So I'm just hoping that this becomes an invitation to those who may not know otherwise the texts and the opportunities in their faith. So, people who listen to my music are disarmed because they're not necessarily going to a synagogue to hear it. They're at a concert hall or whatever. And my hope is that they see this, that you can use this as an entry point.
The book is The Joy of Judaism by Sam Glaser. Amazon, you can pick it up right there. you said something that hit me very deeply. You have been performing just sensational performances in front of not just, we talked a moment ago that you have a huge fan base throughout the entire spectrum of the Jewish world. There's almost no one else who crosses over all those lines and has that kind of, people literally cherish you and the music. They fall in love with you, and that's what happened to me at a Cage conference. But you just said something very interesting, because it is not uncommon when you're giving a public concert. There are people there. I know that they're Christians. I know they're not Jewish, and they're dancing and singing. You connect to them. I want to ask you this question, Sam. What's your prayer for mankind?
My prayer for mankind is that we all love each other, appreciate the gifts in each one of our unique areas, that we appreciate God behind the scenes, orchestrating each of our lives, that we are able to sing together and dance together and focus on the things that bring us together and to support one another and to look beyond our political differences and to see the unique spark of godliness in every human being and support that spark and uplift the fallen and avoid those temptations to might makes right or what have you, but to look out for those less fortunate and learn stewardship and giving so that we can hold each other up and support one another.
That's the question.
Sure.
Always wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
In popular music,
Yeah.
not Jewish music, the Beatles are out because that doesn't count. Who's your favorite songwriter?
That's great. You removed the Beatles because, of course,
No, you
that's
can't.
everybody's.
You have to move the Beatles and or else it's.
Yeah, it's true. Well, I grew up with, just like I had lots of different Jewish inspiration, I had lots of musical inspiration. So I went to symphonies every Thursday night with my mom because she had the
Really?
LA Phil tickets. I used to go to opera. I love musical theater, which is evident in a lot of my music. In my high school years, I discovered jazz, which was kind of mind-blowing. And then, of course, being a child of the late 60s and 70s, I grew up with album-oriented rock.
Who? Name names.
The great, like, singer-songwriter pianists like Billy Joel, Elton John, Stevie Wonder.
Elton John is insane.
They're all just, they were all channeling music from some very special place. And then the great rock bands, the Eagles, Zeppelin, Genesis, Yes, all that stuff. Kansas blew me away.
Yeah.
All that stuff. When I approached Jewish music, I think from a different perspective as my peers, in that a lot of them came out of a folk place, a klezmer place, or a singer song leader place. Like they were in front of camps with their guitar,
Right.
trying to get all the kids happy.
Right.
And that's not where I came from.
Right.
I came from as a producer. I went to my first recording studio as an 11-year-old and made my first album, and I knew I had found my place. So I grew up loving the machinery, loving the technology, reading all the magazines, figuring out how to make my own albums. I couldn't afford to go to fancy studios when I became a teenager. I had to do it myself. So I learned how to do it myself and built my studio from the ground up. LAX Records, my first studio in LA when I graduated college, was a 8-track facility, which was all I could afford at the time.
Right.
And then just, sort of went up from there so that I could do it myself. But I approached it like the Eagles, or the Beatles. What's the best sounding record we could possibly make?
What's your favorite Beatles song?
Yeah, it's nearly impossible because I'm sort of so deeply connected with their repertoire. Michelle, My Belle just came into my mind for no reason whatsoever.
A Day in the Life.
Eleanor Rigby, Day in the Life. I mean, Mutant. I think every album-oriented artist to this day is still trying to recreate Sgt. Pepper's. I turned to a producer friend after working all night on a single mix, and we turned to each other and said, it will never happen. No one will ever get there. We were moved by art. It was art. It's album-oriented art. And I am an album-oriented artist in an era of singles. You know, iTunes stripped albums of their potential because you could just buy the single and you just didn't need to have all 14 songs. And a lot of artists were loading their one-hit song that they made with fancy producers with a bunch of dreck.
Right.
So unfortunately, the album may have tanked, but it's still my art form. I still release albums. I have 5 albums on deck that are, going to come out in the next 5 years. They're all almost done.
It was so beautiful last night at his son's wedding, at Max's wedding, that he took the microphone during the wedding and would just start singing with the band. Because one of the things that Sam does also beautifully is he has like a 10-piece orchestra, and you sing, you do it for weddings.
With me for over 20 years now. They're
so really,
best players. Yeah,
that was a real treat. That was something very, 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 very special. Is there a, of all the songwriters we spoke about, biggest influence on your music? Top two.
I would say probably Paul McCartney and Beethoven. Yeah, followed closely by Rodgers and Hammerstein. And then it would be definitely Pat Metheny in the woodwork, the jazz great guitar player.
Beethoven's Ninth, which is your favorite movement?
Well, I love them all, but the last one kind of rocks your socks off. Best coda ever written in history, I think.
Yeah. You have a lot of Broadway in you and in the music, that kind of music. Where does that come from?
Well, I grew up on musical theater, I guess because my mom was into it. My dad was into jazz. My mom was into musical theater. Our Friday night dinner back then was essentially, first of all, we had Kiddush and we got a blessing from our dad, which I think very few of our other peers at Sinai Temple got. So thank God we retained Shabbos. Wow. We had a little Shabbos. Then we'd go do whatever we wanted to do. But it inevitably segued after dessert into singing around the piano.
Yeah.
And my mom's a wonderful pianist. She was a music major and singer and all that. So all the various relatives are musical. Thank God we got music on both sides of the family. So the jam sessions at the Glaser house. And in our living room, we had a drum kit, a bass, a big bass amp, guitars, all that stuff. Everybody had percussion instruments. And we would sing the Cole Porter songbook, Rodgers and Hammerstein, Rodgers and Hart, all the songs from Fiddler on the Roof, The Me Nobody Knows, the great songs of the 60s, that great book by Milt Oken. We had a Jewish book called The Songs We Sing, which had all those old school great Jewish camp songs. I have a 3-album set called The Songs We Sing, Volume 1, 2, and 3, honoring that old book. That's all the Jewish classics, the ones I didn't write, are on those 3 albums. So,
the most comfortable place when I'm public speaking, that's most of my work, is public speaking in front of an audience. That's where I'm most comfortable, because I feed off the audience. I know you do it. That means when you're there and there are thousands of people, the whole auditorium is just packed, people are dancing, you feed off that.
Oh, yeah.
How do you handle that in the studio? For me, in the studio is very challenging because as a speaker, you have to, you're not getting that feedback, and you have to find it, but it's not natural. The natural thing is you're in front of the audience. How do you find it in the studio?
Well, they're 2 completely separate animals. The studio is like sculpture. It's like you're sculpting with stone. No, it's like first you're sculpting with clay and you're building an edifice, but then you carve away. So you create lots of stuff with all the elements that you hear the song requiring, and then you peel away. So in the mix, it's got the vibe that you're looking for, and you allow the keyboard to shine here, and the guitar to be there, and the violin only in this ear. But, so it's sort of subtractive. after you've done
Well,
the
that makes
additive
so
stuff.
much sense.
So that's that process. And you're just trying to honor the song. You're trying to honor the original vision of what the song should sound like. Sometimes there's nice surprises, like you'll figure out something that you never would have expected to
Right.
put in the song.
Right.
But normally you're just honoring the song and bringing that song up to its ultimate place. Just like in real estate, you try to bring that land parcel up to its best value.
Right.
You try to honor the song and bring it to its best. Live is completely different. Live, it's all about connection. It's all about feeding off the audience. It's about looking into that crowd, be it 100 people or 1,000 people, and knowing what they need at that moment. Knowing what's appropriate, knowing what will rock their world, knowing what will take them on an emotional journey. Sine wave, right? Highs and lows. And, of course, you want to leave them on a really powerful high. My concerts inevitably end in people dancing around the room. So, try to get the total major horror going on at the very end of my show. And that's Jew or non-Jew, right? Just because people just love to dance and get together and do that kind of thing. Thank God the choreography is really easy for a good horror. So the connection is extremely important.
And you totally feed off that, and I watched you do it. And conversely,
Yeah.
you're feeding off the audience. They're going, and then they see you doing your shtick. You have to watch him to understand this. And there's no shortage of YouTube videos of him just blowing away an audience. And they then feed off of your, it's not shtick. He's like just smoking, and he's dancing on the keyboard. He's standing up, and whatever it is, you have to watch it. I can't convey it in words. They then feed off of what happens there, and it just keeps spinning.
Hopefully a
and
virtuous
cycling.
cycle, yeah.
It's an amazing cycle
Of energy, yeah.
The idea of putting your lyrics at the beginning of the chapters in the Joy of Judaism.
Yeah.
How did that come to you?
Well, it was just logical to me. When I sort of created a master plan of what I wanted to say, 70 chapters. All my numbers, of course, are significant for all sorts of reasons. I like the 70 facets of Torah, 70 nations of the world. So sort of tapping into that. And I just pinpointed what the title should be, what the subject matter should be, and the song that would go with it. And then, it was just a matter of filling in those gaps over the next. I didn't know it would take so long.
Jewish songwriters.
Yeah.
Biggest influence.
Probably Billy Joel, who, isn't so necessarily in touch with his Judaism. But hopefully, Bill, it's that time. Get in touch.
You hear that?
If you're watching this.
Yes. And he watches this show regularly. So to him, it's like a whole thing.
Right.
So, in fact, he schedules his performances around this show so that he doesn't miss anything.
There's a lot of Jewish songwriters that I resonate with. Obviously, the greats, Leonard Bernstein and that ilk. But in terms of contemporary Jewish singers out there today,
No, just 20th century.
20th century,
Jewish music.
yeah, people are doing Jewish music like I'm doing
Right.
Jewish music.
Right.
It's really hard for me to say, for a
Really?
number of reasons. Number one, they're my peers, and it's who do you say, who do you not say?
No, but I thought you were going to say Shlomo.
Well, the number one influence for me, of course, was Shlomo Carlebach. And one of the gifts I had when I started doing Jewish music, he started needing a new keyboard player when he'd come to the West Coast.
Really?
So I got to be his accompanist for about 5 years.
What was that like?
Well, to be in the room with him was, a magical thing. I really believe he was a tzaddik in our time. And the stories surrounding him are surreal, but they happen because I was there.
Did when you were his keyboardist
Yeah.
for those years,
Only on the
Did-
West Coast, I
did-
should say. It's not like I
right.
went around the world with him. Yeah.
when you would do a session with him,
Yeah.
did he give you a lot of latitude, or was he he had his idea of what you were gonna do?
Shlomo concerts define the word balagan. Balagan means utter chaos because there was no set list. You never quite knew. You generally knew what key the song was going to start in. He never arranged for the band necessarily. Sometimes arrangements and bands were foisted upon him, and people would write out arrangements. But the typical Shlomo show was anybody who could play was asked to play. Thankfully, I had a good ear, and I could hear where he was going, and I could, tell the guitar player to back off and go tune his guitar for a minute, or whatever. The drummer, you're overplaying, or find the 2 and the 4, because I naturally go into music director mode. But you just never knew. And he also was so kind that he couldn't say no to people who weren't the best musicians. So inevitably, there'd be somebody playing tambourine really loud, really poorly. So it was a crazy scene, his concerts.
But you had free reign.
Thank God, I could play whatever I wanted. He never said a discouraging word. He only supported me, only supported my music. He told me one time, he pulled me aside and said, Sam, your songs, your melodies are so high, from the highest place, and you have to be prepared for Mashiach to come to you and say, "Nu, Sam, how did you know all my nigunim?" Also, Debbie Friedman was sort of the queen of Jewish folk music as I grew up, and a lot of her songs, just like Shlomo's songs, became sort of the normative camp songs. And she was also a regular at Cage, so I got to perform with her at nearly each of those conferences and sing with her and hang out with her, and she had a great apartment in the Upper West Side with a nice Steinway.
Really?
So I always kind of need a piano around to play. So, I would check in there, and we'd jam together and whatever. But I remember when I was just starting out in Jewish music, it was pretty much her, Shlomo Carlebach, Safam. It was a very small market, if you will, of people providing spiritual music. And once again, this is not Shtetl, Klezmer.
No,
it's not Ellen. What was the guy's name? The guy who did the vaudeville. Alan Sherman.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't poking fun at Judaism. It was deeply felt, deeply realized spiritual music. Like I said, from the heart, entering the heart, with deceivingly simple melodies. I still strive to have such simplicity in the DNA of my melodies. And I'm told, even yesterday, my wife told me, your songs are too damn complicated. Why don't you just simplify? Why did you have to go into that weird section right there? But I don't know. I'm just honoring the song when I write a song.
That was the question Shira asked you.
Yeah.
I have one last question for you.
Yeah.
Hashem gave you such a gift, you know it. You didn't need to go into the Jewish music world. You very likely, you know this, could have gone into completely secular music. You could have gone into, whether it was popular music, you could have gone to Broadway music. And you would have likely been very, very successful. The Jewish world was more what was there any point, what made you choose this and jettison what very likely would have been an amazing career in popular music?
Well, at the time that I was segueing into Jewish music, a friend said, Sam, you're committing career suicide. I don't understand what you're doing.
That's what I wondered.
Because you're taking on Judaism, and that means that I just quit my band, or I should say I was fired from my band, because I was in a Motown band at the time. I had my own band. I was in a Motown band, and I was doing music for TV. I was doing all the sports channel broadcasts. I was doing music for the Dodgers, the Angels, the Clippers. Anytime they'd cut to commercial was my music playing, or the background music, or the credits music. So thank God I'd found my niche in that business, and my Motown band started getting annoyed with me because I was subbing out, sending a substitute player for Friday night gigs. Because I recognized that all the growth that I'm experiencing spiritually, now that I'm deeply connecting with Shabbat, doesn't jive with plugging in gear, schlepping across town, getting on a plane, getting a paycheck, turning on the gear. It felt wrong. So there was a point at which my growth in music and my growth in Judaism were clashing. And I recognized that something had to give. Thank God, because God orchestrates everything. At that time, my Hineni album came out. And that song became a hit for me. 1992, I believe, was the official release. I wrote most of the music in 91. And then some other Jewish artists started recording my material. Then I got invited to Cage. I was singing it in front of 2,500 people at that USC sold-out, crazy auditorium where the air conditioning wasn't working. And then I started getting invitations to perform out of town. For my rock band to play a club in L.A., like the Roxy or Madame Wong's or wherever we used to play, you had to pull your audience. Like, it was pulling teeth to get people to come out because there's so much music in L.A.
Right, you're competing against
Yeah, it was
other people
immense
very,
competition. But you had to play every month or else you had nowhere to tell a record label to come see you.
Right,
You had to create a reality that you're already an entity.
right, you're established.
Right, I had to create that was an illusion. But, you had to get at least 100 people or you'd never get back to the club. Right? So I was in the midst of that. I've been doing that for maybe 5 or 6 years at that point. And I recognized that, wow, getting invited to play, getting paid pretty well. Expenses are on top of it and are not coming out of my paycheck. The warmth and beauty of performing Jewish music that was substantial instead of writing music for TV shows that's just disposed of the next season. Right? It felt like I was writing disposable music that was being thrown into the trash can.
Right.
So how hard should I work on a cue that is disposable? Talk about a neshama killer.
Right.
It's all neshama stuff for me.
Right, because it's all from you. That means
Right.
part of you is being jettisoned. The
Right.
part of you is going in the garbage. That's
Right. So
completely antithetical.
yeah, I wrote a song about that called "What Will You Leave Behind," and I
yeah.
recognized nothing
Right.
at this rate.
Right. So it was. So when you're singing about Shabbos, you mean it, and you made that sacrifice because you could have gone in another direction, very successful. But for Shabbos, which is so much the anchor of so much of your music,
Right.
there was a no-brainer for
Right.
you.
So when that woman asked me back then, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this? You're about to get married." I was just engaged at that point. She says, "Wrong move, bro. Don't do it." And I said, it may seem like a sacrifice, but it's like the sacrifice you make when you walk into a 7-Eleven and buy a lottery ticket for $1. I won the lottery, the whole enchilada. I got this book. I got a family. I have an amazing community in Los Angeles, Pico Robertson, 50 synagogues in a 1-mile radius from my home. I'm a founding member of several of them. What can replace that? What can replace a family where the children and the adults actually get along and all the generations connect through Torah? What's the currency that can pay for being able to walk your son down the aisle? I got to walk my son down the aisle last night in the Promised Land.
What were you thinking?
I felt like it was the culmination of all my ancestors' dreams. My relatives who built this land, who are the pioneers in this land. My relatives who survived Auschwitz. My relatives who watched their children leave this path. As the entire western side of the country, the Glaser family essentially moved away from tradition. So, at least for my family, my little family, I get to pull it back and get back on this amazing train, this amazing mission of the Jewish people. It's so amazing. It's so powerful. It's eternal. It's touching eternity. So it's a real gift to be here. It's a gift to be part of the Jewish people. It's a gift to be a singer amongst the Jewish people, to make this music, to bring people together. Every single neshama, like that one young lady that Shlomo touched, every single neshama is precious. This work, just like helping Jews who've gotten into other faiths, helping them back, you can't do it en masse, right? It's one person at a time. One neshama at a time. If I'm doing a concert and there's 5,000 people in the audience all having a great time, partying, whatever, if one person connects, it's worth it. It's worth the flight in coach to have gone to that city and played. right?
Yeah, I. That's a personal.
Oh,
It's because I'm
wow.
such an amazing interviewer that I bring out the best in my. I'm kidding.
I wasn't ready to go there.
No, but I so I've attended more than a few weddings in my life, Sam,
Yeah.
and
How was last night?
it was horrible. It was. It was really. I'll explain it. This is how I have to explain it.
Okay.
So normally when I'm at a wedding, everybody, as far as I know, in the audience, we want to be mesameach chasam v'kala. It means we're there to make your wedding amazing and to lift the people, the bride and the groom, to lift them up, to give them a very special day. That is not at all what happened last night. What happened last night was the flip, and I've never experienced this in my life, where everyone that was in my circle, and there was a lot of people, we were there drinking from the energy that you, that your brother, that your family, then the chassan and kala, the spiritual ecstasy that poured out of that evening fed the audience. That means it went the other way. That means this holy Jew, my dear brother, his brother Yom Tov, they're just amazing. Yom Tov and I go back a long way. We were all, and you could just see the people just watching, and it was like you were feeding us. Your bracha was so beautiful, and it was followed by your brother's bracha achrita. It was something. He said something because he was already next to the stage. He said something to the keyboard player. No one knew. No one cared. And then he gets called up as the uncle of the groom. And then he goes back down the aisle and dances for the chassan and kala when he's receiving the seventh, which is the largest of the seven blessings.
That's normally not done.
It's normally not done. We're using the word normally. Let me just tighten that up a little. It's never done. If it is, I wasn't invited to that wedding, and I've been to a few. And he's dancing for the chassan and kala before he finally ascends. And I thought, well, of course, his brother has a beautiful voice. This is, I mean, you could study in Juilliard, but this is from God, what he and his brother have. So I thought he was going to do it in the most just traditional way, but he would just do it very, very beautifully. He's a very gifted singer and musician like this one over here. And he didn't. He went in his own way, completely own way, and he is something so beautiful. I'd never heard that. The band was brilliant.
Yeah.
They followed along.
Just
brilliant.
watching,
yes,
like hawks on.
And they were just staring at him, staring at you, and then staring at each other. The keyboard player is turning back to the saxophones, and they're just like this, and then going back. I had never seen that, and I've been to quite a few weddings. On behalf of the hundreds of people that were there at the Yochasna at Max and Hadar's wedding last night in Eretz Yisrael, I just thank you so much for once again just giving us, because you were giving us last night. It was you at the Chazan's Tish when the Ksuba's there and all these things where all the men are there. The singing, the joy was really, really stunning, and everyone was just drinking everything that was coming out of you and your beautiful family. Hashem should bless you. Should really see your family grow and grow, and that and Hitler Yamach Shemai lost. We won, and a beautiful family is growing and growing and growing. And it's mamish so delicious what's happening, and Hashem should continue to strengthen you. Admei v'eshem, we should both welcome Mashiach right here in Yerushalayim, B'mher Yomenu, quickly in our time. The book again, The Joy of Judaism by Sam Glaser. Go on Amazon, order it there. It's breathtaking. I'm going to read the other half of it tonight, later on. Mazel tov to you, Shira, your entire family.
Thank you.
You should only see nachas. You should only see Jewish joy. Mac should only build a bayis nem b'Yisrael,
Amen, amen.
a binyan adayad, really.
Yeah.
You've given so much to so many, and I know that means the world to you. And whether you're playing a thing or the thousands of people, it's the same Sam. And it's wonderful. The book again.
Thank you, Rabbi.
The Joy of Judaism, Sam Glaser. You can get it on Amazon. But understand what's going to happen. You will capture an insight into the Jewish faith from almost every direction, like a diamond just shines in every different direction you can imagine. But you are going to connect with this fellow right here, with Sam, and you're going to understand what he's about, because this is a deeply personal work. I imagine that this took a long time for you to write, because this is you. This is not the. If you want to know what to do on Shabbos, when's the last time you can light candles? No, it's about the beauty of Shabbat and the beauty of lighting candles. It's a marvelous work. It's epic, and I know it'll touch many, many lives. And thank you, brother, for being here and allowing me to enjoy in your simcha. It's really mamish beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You have just one thing.
Yeah.
A website.
Yes, samglaser.com. And, of course, there's now the joyofjudaism.com, or Joy Jude if you don't feel like writing the whole thing out.
Right.
And, plenty up there. Facebook, YouTube.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sam.
Ayayay simin tov. Ayayay mazel tov. Yehei lanu lecho Yisrael. Amen.
Beautiful.
Shkoyach.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Great one to you.